Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing an issue which seems to have come to the forefront here in recent weeks, the issue of testing and the overall pandemic situation here in Thailand. For those who are unaware, there have been a number of restrictions. Basically we're in full lockdown here in Thailand as a result of the emergency decree of March 2020. And part of this is predicated upon, according to CCSA at least, is predicated upon ongoing case count. And, I can get into my thinking on it. Well, I have gotten into my thinking on, this overall lockdown situation in other videos. But the interesting thing to me is this ongoing issue with respect to cases and there being possibly a correlation between testing and cases, which came to my attention via an article in the Bangkok Post. It's bangkokpost.com. Article is titled "Curbs Needed," and needed is in quotes, "to flatten curve." And I'm going to quote a direct quote. Dr. Tawison, and that's the head of the Center for COVID-19 Situation in Administration here in Thailand. Dr. Tawison said that the new record of infections in Bangkok was the result of proactive mass testing and rapid testing in communities. I want to quote that again. Dr. Tawison said that the new record of infections in Bangkok was the result of proactive mass testing and rapid testing in communities. So that was an interesting piece of insight. And then there was another article, more recent, and it was interesting to me. This came up in a more politicized context, and not to get into the politics of that, but I thought this was rather interesting. Again, from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled "Opposition Targets 5 Ministers, PM in No Confidence Motion." Quoting directly, and the bulk of the thrust of this article was entirely different from this particular excerpt, but I thought this was interesting. Quoting directly, "The opposition will also take aim at Mr. Anutin over irregularities in the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines, despite promises about widespread availability, and the ATKs." And the ATKs is antibody test kits. That's an acronym. Quoting further, "The SARS-CoV-2 antigen and lecurate antibody test produced by Lipu Medical Technologies were recalled in the United States on May 28th due to a high risk of false results, according to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA." So apparently there were issues associated with testing, and the opposition to the current government is bringing this up with respect to apparently a number of these test kits are being procured or attempting to be procured, and the opposition is bringing up these test issues. But I just find it interesting, again, quoting directly from Dr. Tawison, or from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com, article titled "Curbs Needed to Flatten Curve." Quoting directly, Dr. Tawison said that the new record of infections in Bangkok was the result of proactive mass testing and rapid testing in communities. And there seems to me, again, layperson's observation here, that there's an element of what I would almost describe as sort of the Groundhog Day phenomenon. And for those who don't know what Groundhog Day is, in the United States, there's this kind of minor holiday. There's a movie called Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. It's a fabulous movie. But it's based on an actual holiday where a groundhog comes up out of the ground, and sort of the saying goes that if he sees his shadow, 6 more weeks of winter. If he doesn't see his shadow, it'd be an early spring, basically how it goes. But the thinking behind it is that the groundhog gets scared of its own shadow. And that sort of, there's a superstition that means there's 6 more weeks of winter. I think it's reasonable to ask whether or not, especially where Tawison, quote, Dr. Tawison said that the new record of infections in Bangkok was the result of proactive mass testing and rapid testing in communities. It begs the question, is there kind of a groundhog moment occurring where, in a sense, society is seeing its own shadow? A year ago when these tests were not so prolific, there was no proliferation of these tests, perhaps was the issue not actually there and we just were unaware of it? I don't know. I actually don't know, because things have changed between now and then. I'm not drawing any conclusions, but I think it's reasonable to ask, in light of the fact that, the Post noted issues with some of these test kits, which I don't know if those are the ones being used right now or whatever. And then on top of it, the head of the CCSA saying testing is sort of driving, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but to paraphrase what I took away from that is testing is, to a certain degree, or at least seems to be driving the numbers. Now, if that's the case, again, I don't know, but I think reasonable people can pose that question, and it will be interesting to see if there will be any further elucidation on that point moving forward. Again, we'll keep folks updated on the overall situation on this channel as the situation evolves.